My name is Juan. Welcome to our presentation. Today we'll be discussing the event of May 13th that happened in Malaysia, and these are my group mates.
Hi, my name is Muhammad Hafiz bin Azizi.
Hi, my name is Keelan.
Oh, hi, my name is Hafiz. Enjoy.
The following is a video to explain the events of the May 13th incident. The video includes images that some may find disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. Today our group is going to be talking about the May 13th incident that happened in Malaysia. But before we begin, I would like to highlight that all of my group mates are Malaysian and we would like to keep as neutral a stance as possible throughout this talk. My name is Juan. I'll be asking questions. To my right is Hafiz. To my left is also Hafiz. And to my far left is Keelan. First of all, I would like to ask, what was this incident about?
So on May 13, 1969 is still considered one of the darkest days in Malaysia. So what actually happened during that time is there was a major conflict between the Chinese and the Malays, whereby this conflict actually began 5 years prior to what happened on May 13. So right after the general election, the Chinese started a parade, and that ended up badly where a lot of people were hurt and a few hundred people were actually killed during the parade.
Okay, so it was a very serious conflict that had come about. My next question would actually be, were there any different perspectives between the parties involved in this case?
Yeah.
So based on the reliable article that I have read, so based on Chinese perspective, so after the election, they have won few seats in the parliament, which make Barisan Nasional lost 2/3 of the seats in the parliament. So to show their happiness, to celebrate the victory, they decided to do a big parade throughout Kuala Lumpur. So
So to every incident or story, there's two perspectives to it, right? From the Malay perspective, the Malay community see the parade as a provoking action by the Chinese community. The Chinese community had displayed a big broom on their float, and the slogan was attached to the broom saying that they're going to sweep Malay out of Malaysia by chanting a word that translates to Malay should die or Malay go and die. So that is what basically the Malay perspective had seen on that parade itself.
So, but in Chinese perspective, they will ask what is the wrong from doing that thing. So because to them, there's no rules or law that mention that they can't do that kind of parade to show the happiness. Because this is their first time, so they get excited to celebrate, to show their victory.
Before we go into any personal details or any conflict, I would like to stop it there and ask the last question, which is, what are your personal opinions on this conflict and what was the outcome of it?
Okay, as I said earlier, May 13, 1969 is still considered as one of the darkest days. In my opinion, I'm very much glad that they could actually resolve this issue, because if the situation were to prolong till date, we can't, the unity that we have now wouldn't be possible, like multicultural marriages wouldn't be possible and stuff.
Yeah, me too. I'm so glad that this conflict has been resolved years back. So yeah, if we can't resolve this kind of conflict, we can enjoy the festival that we share, the culture that we share together among the races, the food, and so on.
So in my opinion, that yes, I'm glad, but it also hits me on a personal level, where is that my family is half Chinese and half Malay. So if that incident would have carried to this day, I don't think I'll be possible sitting here right now, and my family basically won't exist. So does that impact my family indirectly till today?
So, I mean, I'm glad that everyone is happy that the conflict is over. I'm pretty sure that both the Malays and the Chinese have regretted this incident, as it led to a lot of deaths, a lot of family members lost, and the conflict is over now. Hopefully nothing like that will ever happen again, and that is actually the end of our talk. Thank you very much.
Bye bye.
As it was mentioned earlier during the group discussion, there were several other incidents that have actually led to the outbreak of conflict that took place on 13 May 1969. The conflict that arose on 13 May was the consequences of several incidents that took place 5 years before the devastating major conflict after the general election. The first incident brings us way back to 1964, where one Malay and one Chinese were killed over a petty argument and dozens were injured. It started when a Malay market employee was hit by a shovel by a 15-year-old Chinese vegetable vendor. Apart from that, one of the most devastating incidents that took place in 1965 was the killing of Mak Mina, who was a very popular actress during the 1960s. She was brutally stabbed to death, and at the same time, several other Malays were killed during this conflict as well. Furthermore, it follows by another incident on the year 1967, where a group of Chinese surrounded the mosque where the Malays were holding a meeting and started attacking them. The seriousness of this racial conflict has reached its peak during a wild attack that took place on 24th April 1969, just 2 weeks before the general election. An UMNO worker named Qasim bin Omar was brutally murdered by the Chinese members of the Labour Party on his way home from the election campaign. He was beaten up and murdered on the streets, and red paint was smeared all over his face. All these incidents have intensified the racial tension to a dangerous level, and these have led to this serious clash that took place on May 13.
There are multiple types of conflict. In this case, it is a combination of conflict of interest, value conflict, and effective conflict. A conflict of interest arises when there is an incompatibility between the goals of two or more parties. The Chinese have different objectives where they wanted to have the same benefit as Malays in Malaysia and wanted to be majority. But for the Malays, it is vice versa. They wanted to maintain their government, which is Barisan Nasional, and become majority in the country. Value conflict also adds to tension between the parties as value conflict arises when there is a difference in ideologies between the involved parties. The Malays and Chinese have been living in tension the past 5 years before the incident as they have different lifestyle, culture and ideologies. The Chinese want their leader to control the country, which is Malaysia, and want to earn the same benefit as Malays in Malaysia. Then this is where the effective conflict then kicks in. Effective conflict arises from interpersonal tension and are mainly due to emotional reasons. The already tense relationship between the different races was made worse by the political tension, and this caused a negative emotional turmoil between both sides, leading to fights. The Malays felt provoked by Chinese when the Chinese had a huge parade throughout Kuala Lumpur while chanting bad things about Malays. From this, the negative emotion came out from the Malays towards the Chinese. All these different type of conflict made is so that Malays and Chinese were not able to reach mutual agreement and use the conflict in productive manner.
As stated before, the May 13 conflict was a conflict that was destructive in nature. Just to introduce what a destructive conflict is. From Nakayama, conflict is seen as destructive if it creates or increases the tension between the involved party and is ultimately unproductive for all the parties involved. In the case of the May 13 incident, the affected parties were the Malays. The Chinese population of Malaysia had stated the conflict due to a political issue. As we see in the video, the political leaders of both races had already been in a high tension situation as they were competing to win the election. And the high tension between both parties was transferred to the general population of Malays and Chinese. According to Magaran report, there were multiple reports of attack that took place between 1964 to 1969. One of the cases is the killing of the actress Mak Minah and Pak Kasim that happened in 2 different places and time. Became very destructive because it caused a lot of violence and death and nothing more.
Mediation is a conflict resolution process in which a neutral third party facilitates the negotiation process between two parties that are in conflict. Mediation can be an effective conflict resolution method because the involvement of a third party tends to decrease the level of hostility between the two parties in conflict. The third party also provides recommendations to resolve the conflict but does not choose the solution for the conflict. The recommendations the third party gives are usually accepted easier by the two parties in conflict as it is a recommendation given by a neutral third party. It can help to reduce tensions before the conflict becomes extreme. In the case of the May 13 situation, mediation between the Malays and the Chinese could have helped to prevent the hostility from reaching violent levels.